In 1998, calligrapher Donald Jackson approached the Benedictine monks of St. John's University and Abbey in Collegeville, Minnesota, with a proposal. He wanted to create the first handwritten illuminated Bible since the invention of the printing press. Recently, he was a guest on the Bookguys radio program to discuss the project, which is scheduled for completion in 2007. This is about an hour.
Hi, I'm Mike Cuthbert, and with Alan Stipek, Senior Appraiser with the American Society of Appraisers, we're the Bookguys. Donald Jackson heads up a team of artisans that have created the first handmade Bible in over 500 years. We meet him and see his work in this special C-SPAN edition of the Bookguys. You can get on subsequent programs to ask us anything and everything about books by calling us at 1-800-828-BOOK, 800-828-2665, or reach us from the email link on our website, bookguys.com. We're glad you're with us for the Bookguys. We welcome once again our national C-SPAN audience for this special edition of the Bookguys. We'll have a Bookguys quiz later, and you can win some very valuable prizes by the correct answer to the quiz. For you regular radio listeners, watch our webpage for the date and time of the broadcast of this week's program on C-SPAN. The Gutenberg Press was a seminal invention in the history of the world. It made possible, some say almost demanded, an increase in literacy among civilized people that not only spread knowledge but also dissent about class and status. Last week we talked about Thomas Paine and the power of the pen in the 18th century. Paine would not have been a best-selling author and revolutionary influence without the printing press. The printing press changed the nature of print and its impact on regular citizens, similar to what the Internet is now doing for the world. In the process, however, the concept of the book as a work of art may have become secondary. Donald Jackson lives in a world in which the artistic component is stressed. He is a calligrapher. That means that what he produces has artistic merit as well as dispensing information. His dream project has always been to produce a handmade, illuminated Bible and illustrated using all the techniques used by the pre-Gutenberg scribes to produce books, and the result is the St. John's Bible, an 1,150-page, 7-volume Bible on vellum. 5 of the volumes have been completed, and sections of the work are now going on a national tour to give the public a taste of what the completed project will look like. Donald Jackson joins us to talk about the project of his lifetime. Welcome.
Good to be here.
We talked with Father Patella from St. John's Monastery about this project, and it was awe-inspiring then, and since we talked with him, even more of it has been completed. How long has it taken, in fact, since you first put quill pen to vellum and started this project?
Well, I guess to start with, we had to do lots of samples before the signature went on any contract, because I had to demonstrate, as it were, sell the idea and to ignite the imaginations of people, because they didn't know how it was going to be. They had this idea that it was going to be a repeat of a medieval Bible, which wouldn't suit this era. And they didn't, however, know how it could be different. So I had, first of all, to show them that. And then I suppose we started putting pen to paper in and paper, I say, parchment. Yeah, yes. And about 1990, I'm terrible about dates and things. I'm living in the moment. I mean, I live in the sort of almost agony of trying to work out what the scriptures mean to me, how I can sort of be like a magpie and steal ideas from all across the centuries, from the past, the present, the internet, the Hubble telescope. All of these things weave their way into the St. John's Bible. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any point in doing it.
At what point did the St. John's people say, okay, and with what degree of excitement versus trepidation?
There was a certain amount of trepidation. They had a lot of courage. You're a book guys, okay? It takes a certain amount of courage to slap on the table $5, $8, $10 million for a let's say nowadays, I don't know what you get for that, but you'd probably get a 14th, 15th century Flemish manuscript in good condition. That exists. That's a particular kind. That's an investment in something that already exists. For these guys to have the courage to put down, or at least commit themselves to probably $3 million, or more, for something that didn't exist, that was a dream. That takes a particular kind of courage, or lunacy, as they would freely admit. I mean, and of course, if my wife had realized exactly how much work and time in our life it would take, then I don't suppose it had ever got done either, because she would have said no in the first place.
How did you and St. John's College get together?
Well, it simply as a venue, back in 1981, I used to be involved quite a lot in calligraphy in the US, giving workshops and so on. And out of that background, these are lettering people, many of whom now are, type designers, and you see them in the magazines and so on, who were students over those years ago. And it came the time in 1981 when it seemed right to have an international conference. And when we were looking for a venue, St. John's came onto the screen, and we all went there from all countries all over the world, 500 or 600 people, and that's how the connection came. They had themselves already a rather special collection. This is in Collegeville, Minnesota. I mean, it's 75 miles north of the Twin Cities and in beautiful prairies and so on, but hardly you would think the center of, the book.
It is a monastery.
Yeah, that's true. And they had some collections there. And, it's 150 years this week, I think, that they've been there. So there was a natural affinity. And I think it was on public radio there that I was asked the question, what would you like to do? And I said, I've been saying it on radio for 30 years and TV in this country and anywhere else. I'm waiting for somebody to ask me to write the Bible. And it so happened the idea, it wasn't the right time. 81 was not right. And so over a drink in 95 in Chicago with one of the monks, I pitched the idea of this as something for the millennium. And he afterwards said he thought it was a crazy idea. But then when he went back to friends that night, and he said, I've been talking to this guy, he's got this idea. And so they said, well, that's not such a bad idea. And eventually it percolated through in the monastery, and people would come up to him, Father Eric Hollis, as it happens, and say, when's this Bible coming along? And of course, nothing was coming along. It's just that the thing took root and flowered. There were people who were quite rightly questioned they should be spending money on helping the poor, and then there were others who wanted it to be type, and then there were others who trusted in this process.
Our guest is Donald Jackson, former scribe to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth's Crown Office at the House of Lords, now artistic director and illuminator of the St. John's Bible. To our C-SPAN listeners, they're seeing replicas of the C-SPAN, the St. John's Bible. The actual Bible itself, as I mentioned, is 7 volumes. It is 1,150 pages, 24 and a half inches tall by 15 and 7/8 inches wide. I don't know that it has been weighed yet because it's not quite complete, but this looks like a printed Bible. Obviously, as a calligrapher and an artisan, that's not what this is. A handmade Bible is not printed. You must have had some fun or fulfillment in assembling just the tools to make this. You've got in your hand, for our radio listeners, a quill.
This is a swan's quill.
Swan's, not a goose quill, a swan.
Primarily it would be a goose.
Yeah.
And so the work of the writing of the text, just imagine this, Paul Klee had this, he said that drawing was like taking a line for a walk. And all you have to try to imagine is how 6 people, because the work was divided into 6 people, myself included, would start there every day with a quill, and they have to make it. It's not something you can measure. You have to write first, and then you get the feel for the weight, the angle, so that we were all writing very, very similarly. That took a lot of doing. But think of taking a quill pen for a journey, word by word, letter by letter, chapter by chapter, verse by verse, from one end to the other. Quite a journey. An amazing thing with this glistening black ink sliding from fine sharpness that you get when it's at one angle to a nice strong downstroke and a fat bowl to the O's and the C's and the E's. And each one of those has to be a little surprise. I mean, people say, oh, isn't that boring? No, it isn't, because you try getting 2 S's to look the same, and so there's always that, even for a professional. You fling your pen out, your heart goes before it, and then the hand follows.
Why does it have to be a swan quill pen? Why isn't there something modern that is just as good?
Let me just cut a quill for you.
All right.
People think it's very elaborate and long time. First of all, a quill is quite long and far
Over a
too
foot?
long. Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing you do is stick it in your eye. Yeah. So the first thing you do is you spoil it. You get rid of it. And you cut the end off it.
Uh-huh.
Then you take the barb, as we call it, which are the bits that fly out the side, and you tear it down like so. If I had the strength to do it, and that's a few things like this. But I'm explaining this.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that it takes 27 seconds to make a pen.
Okay.
So then you take a quill knife, which is sharp as a razor, but it's very tough. It's rounded on one edge of the blade, and on the back it's flat. Because when I cut a scoop out of the underside of this feather, I take one scoop, so. Then I chop the very end off, just to make it nice and clean. There's a little bit of stuff inside to scrape that out. Then I put the knife up at the top of my finger, point it towards my thumb. I won't cut it because I just know I won't. And then listen for the click as I put the slit in the pen, which is what carries the ink to the tip. Listen for the slit. That's all it took. Now there I have a nice little fine sharp slit down the middle, and now I take 2 side scoops to make the pen point. One here, I don't know if I can do it so everybody can see it.
Yeah.
And then mirror that on the other side, like so. So, and I missed it because, of course, naturally I haven't got my glasses on in here today. And then so, and then you put that down on to, I use a black bottle of an ink
Yeah.
top because I can see the white against the black.
Sure.
I won't chew up your desk with this. Or maybe I will.
Okay. That's right, it's rented, don't worry
Yeah,
about it.
okay. So then I take my knife and I eyeball that and I cut it back. I just cut it square. Little click like that. Lick it. Dip it into the ink and you can write.
And how long will that last?
But that will last, could last for 14, 15, 20 pages. It's not.
Yeah.
But you have to trim it.
Yeah.
Trim it each day. But the thing is, it's light.
Yeah.
If I close my eyes, I can barely know it's there. You say, why is it better than other tools? Because if I pick up a pen or even a fountain pen, there's a weight there. There's a clumpiness to it. There isn't the readiness. This is like a racing car. You put that in the ink and you go put the foot on the pedal and it flies. But you do that, we're all familiar with this. You pick up a fountain pen, and many of us do like that. But you have to sort of work a bit sometimes to get the old ink to flow. This doesn't happen with this. And don't forget, you can't feel it. It's part of you. So you can pour out that heartbeat into the letters as you go.
Donald Jackson is our guest. He's the artistic director and illuminator of the St. John's Bible. Okay, you got your quill, but that's just the start. You mentioned black ink. I would imagine you're not going down to the Scriveners and picking up some India ink from London just for this job. The inks have to be special, not to mention the colors, the incredible colors that are in this Bible.
True. Actually, we do make our own ink as best we can. Now, the ink used throughout this Bible, and the collectors here will probably wince. There are some people who are interested in inks. I bought, when I was in my 20s, a gross, in translation, 144 box of Chinese inks wrapped in tissue paper, which were already 100 years old, covered in gold leaf, and they've been shipped in on a tea clipper. I mean, this is the story. I mean, I bought the story. I hope you will. But I mean, the thing is, though, that we've discovered since that they're now worth about $500 each on a collectors to collectors. But every letter of the black text in the Bible's been using that stick. It's like that came in handy. Years later, I've been using them, grinding them. I mean, they were actually presentation. They were made specially for presentation, commissioned by one person. It has his name on it. So, I mean, but we're down to about 2 sticks left. We just squeaked in underneath the barrier.
We'll get to the colors in just a moment. The colors and the substances that go into the making of the St. John's Bible with our guest, Donald Jackson. We're the Book Guys.
no. This is
But
your
that
show.
is good to keep. That's a great line because there is something I want to say about the ink and that. It's not just about looks. So
In fact, we can lead that right into the
And I have
Psalms
one question
description.
I'd like to ask
Okay.
also. Yeah, actually, two. We'll not take you too far off.
No.
Navigate you
The
back.
problem is,
Here come Mike.
I'm Mike Cuthbert along with Alan Stipek. We're the Book Guys, a special C-SPAN edition with lots of visuals for you. You folks in our radio audience will do our best to describe what's happening, but you'll have to see the C-SPAN version of this program to see the incredible colors we're talking about, which are made how, Donald Jackson?
well, in some cases that you've got the black ink, which is ground stick ink, which is a mixture of carbon and gum and a little preservative, and that gives the thin but free-flowing but very dense carbon black. The other colors, I use casein, which is quite often because that is a really good adhesion to surface. It flows and good bright colors. Casein is based on milk. I mean, we've heard about tempera, which is based on egg yolk. I use that too. Egg yolk brings in wonderful luminosity, especially to the reds. But from a calligrapher's point of view, a lot of these colors are not just about effect. It's a balancing act. They've got to be able to flow. They have to be able to be there to give you an immediate result. Because calligraphy is fast. It isn't a slow, neat, tidy process.
Donald, pull your
spontaneous.
microphone closer to you.
We need you on mic.
That's all we need. That's fine.
That's why we're giving
Right
you this
into
very
it.
strange look. Donald's looking at both of us like, well, these guys are crazy. We're trying to get you eye contact to tell you to stay on mic.
All right, well, that's it. But I
He's a
mean,
calligrapher, what
look,
does
it's
he
a
do?
lot harder to stop me talking.
Oh, no, we're infatuated. It's great, you know.
Some of the pages seem to have liquid gold on them. They shimmer, and it looks like the ink is just going to run off. It's so rich. What are those gold textures made out of?
Well, there are 3 different kinds of gold used in the Bible mostly, but that liquid gold you mentioned could be any one of the 3, but some of it literally is liquid gold, as used in Islamic manuscripts and so on, where you have gum and water and pure gold powder, and you mix those, grind them very fine, and they will write like an ink. It's a bit like writing with mud. It's one of those more difficult technical things, but because of the result, you're prepared to go to the effort. Now, the brilliant raised gold, burnished gold, is gold leaf burnished onto gesso, which is a mixture of sugar, plaster, white lead, glue, fish glue. And that's ground together again by hand. You can't go to a store, you're quite right. You can't go and buy that because it's all about controlling it. It's about this immediacy thing, this contradiction that most people have with calligraphy being very tight and even anal, actually.
Yeah.
Whereas, in fact, it's about opening up yourself and playing with the pen as if it were a violin. I mean, it's loose.
When folks see the illustrations, the illumination in this Bible, they're going to say, hey, that doesn't look like any monk I've ever seen. Our C-SPAN audience is probably right now looking at a page that you have kindly opened for us of the Psalms, reminding yourself to stay as close to the mic as possible. Could you take us through? Could you take us through this page?
He's got a sense of humor. It's good.
And help us understand how you conceived it and how it turned out?
Well, the challenge is, this is the opening page of the Book of Psalms. 150 Psalms, 5 different volumes, books rather. And the challenge was, how do you evoke the mood of this? It's very passionate. The Psalms are wonderfully passionate, and there's a lot of emotion, but they're within rather strict boundaries. The poetic conventions of the Hebrew text is such that you're quite restricted. You can't be free flow with it. So there is this challenge to do it. But the key to all of this, actually, is in the computer generated images from the sounds of voices singing sacred texts. So
Now, wait a minute. Computer-generated text in a handmade Bible.
yeah, because because we're in a computer age. I mean, I'm not in a monastery in 500 years ago. I'm like you. I live in the present day. Okay, I might not be able to work a cell phone. I confess, but but I told you. that artists are like magpies. They see images everywhere, and if it glitters and it attracts, you think, and you steal it. And they've artists and calligraphers, illuminators have been doing this for centuries. They've been doing it ever since art began. You copy other people's ideas, or at least you wheedle them into yours. And what I see around me is, I see those magic images. You see them in this studio. You see the oscillographs. You could see my voice now. Looks very different from yours on a screen with those zigzaggy, graph-like images going across. And I like that. So I played the monks' voices singing the psalms, and it gave a particular pattern. I got 3 particular patterns. These little thin gold guys going across fragments, and what they do is they go from one page to the other page, and throughout the whole book you've got the sounds of the monks at St. John's captured as an image, rubber stamp image. I just took that from the screen. Now, the other thing though that's special about this is that this Bible is also meant, wherever it seems right, to be as inclusive of others, to recognize, acknowledge the yearning that other people have in their own cultures and the way they reach out to God or to the Spirit in their own way. So you've got here, I also played the voices of the chants of Native American chants here. That's that shape there. And then also the Buddhist chants, which are sort of, the kind of... Well, they create a different sound from the monks, obviously. And then you've got Jewish voices singing the psalms. You've got the call to prayer, that comes from the minarets. That's also, those are all woven in. They're all saying, look, this is a Roman Catholic Bible, but that we're Christian. But there are other people out there, and we acknowledge that. And we're doing it, or I should say, I'm doing it by this way.
Fantastic. One thing that's interesting...
Just a second, Alan. Donald Jackson is our guest. He's the artistic director and illuminator of the St. John's Bible. We're the Bookguys in Washington.
I've never seen a swan's quill used as a pointer. It was perfect. You could have chosen a better example of use.
There you are. You can point at me with it.
I will. I'm going to ask you one question, sir. At the beginning of the interview, you spoke about the fact you work with 5 other individuals and you all work with the same rhythm. Am I to assume you're like a crew team rowing simultaneously, and your meter of your style of calligraphy has to be the same to get continuity into the individual pages? Or does everybody have their own distinct...
It's a very good analogy that you used. And the answer to that is there isn't somebody like... another one would be like, those old movies with the slaves or the galley slaves. Somebody's bang, bang. Right? Yes, there you go. But no, they might accuse me of being like that. But I no, what happens is I developed an alphabet which I liked, which was grown up. Italic, most people know what that means, and they tend to think of just handwriting, or they think of it as invitations or jam labels or things like that. But in fact, italic would not have carried the weight of a sacred text. It doesn't have the formality or the richness. So I designed something which borrows from the past, but is fresh enough and easily readable for today. I could show you in a minute how that I came around to that. But having said that, I had to bring in other people, and they don't grow on trees, good calligraphers. I had to teach them how to relearn to use the quill, as I know that the quill is not it does not deliver perfect marks, but the imperfection far outweighs, because it does pick up on that rhythm, that heartbeat I mentioned earlier. It's like a phonograph needle that you got, and it's on your fingers, and the music it plays is you. But how do you then get other people, highly individual, to sing from the same hymn sheet, as it were, or pull on the same oars? And you just have to... I had to bring them along and get them to love it and to get them to like it enough that they became theirs. And no, each person's rhythm is different. And I can tell, but sometimes with difficulty, the difference between one and another. But we bring our own strengths, our own lives to this. But you would be hard put to see the difference. The one technical way around it is that each double-page spread is always done by the same person. So you're not looking on one page at one person's writing and another and facing it someone else's.
Do you work simultaneously?
No, that most of the work was done in people's homes. They would come into the studio, which I have in Wales, in an old workshop, blacksmith shop in the countryside.
You have to fight through the sheep to get to the door, it looks like.
Well, those sheep are they're very scared of me. They've seen all that parchment going in the door.
They're by the grace of God.
I'm kidding, really, because it's calf skin, but no, it could, if you're thinking Gary Larson here, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's a lovely space, but they come every 6-7 weeks, and then we all look at it, and I will then individually check each person's thing, and I'll say, you're missing this, and then I'll say yes, and then we all get together, and then they all say what they think, and then they go away again more, strengthened, as it were, with their things.
Focused.
And now it's finished. The writing's finished.
One of the stories that I find most fascinating is Alan and I are often describing to our radio listeners vellum, because vellum as a binding is marks a book as old. You had a lot of difficulty in locating a supply of vellum, even going all the way to Israel, where you thought you had found it, but it didn't work out. Tell us a little bit about the search for the perfect vellum.
Well, there was a guy making, one of the problems, it's countercultural, this. You're asking for something that isn't common.
Yeah.
And for the most part, most people's idea of perfection is this tabletop. It's Formica. It's seamless without any kind of change whatsoever. Whereas we're working to a different definition of perfection. We're talking about the definition of capturing a moment and with an image. And okay, it may have a wobble. It may have a slight bit of fear about it, but it can sometimes have joy. And, in order to get that, you're not aiming for that kind of absolute rigid machine-made perfection. Now, the trouble is, most people, when they want parchment for bindings, if they were doing commercial bindings, they would want it to be as similar as possible. They want them all the same. They don't want things violently different. So the only people making vellum are people who do musical instruments. They do, tympanums and drums and things like that. And so I went that route, went to Ireland, and but there they were doing it very, very mechanically, getting the right, no variation of thickness from one to the other. That's the musicians. Well, that didn't work. The skin didn't have the flexibility that we needed. I went to Israel thinking, well, it's not countercultural. They're using this all the time. I found out that most of the skins came from Chicago. But nevertheless, specially chosen ones and blessed in different ways and very serious and so on. But they only write on one side, because for the holy, for the sacred texts in the Hebrew faith, you are on scrolls. You touch the outside, but you never touch the inside. So they would write on the white inside. Now, this is calfskin, remember, not sheep. Then I came back to England, and I just simply got the guys who are doing it, who had been doing it, for royal warrants and printed legal documents and so on still. And I just said, you've got to do it better. Just do it a lot better. And you know what? Everybody in this project has ended up reaching beyond and above their normal standards, and they've all come out, they feel better too. Sure. Done a beautiful job.
Donald Jackson is our guest. We're the Bookguys in Washington. Donald Jackson, our guest, and the project we're talking about is the St. John's Bible, due to be completed in 2008?
I would guess that would be it. It keeps on stretching because we're having exhibits, of course, and we have one in Washington and right now at the Library of Congress. And
why was it necessary in the first place to do it on vellum? With the modern paper-making skills, why not?
It's all about touch. It's about setting up inside yourself a wonderful anticipation. It's a sensuous thing almost. It's like, I know, I think it's the same psychology as lies behind people rushing out and buying power tools. You think, what I could do with this, And as a kid, I can remember going to the art material store and seeing all those colors and seeing the paper and thinking, wow, what I could do with this. But the sense of touch is indescribable. When you take that quill and you touch it onto the surface of that vellum page, it's got a slight resistance. It's like writing on a peach skin. And some of the parchments, which are cheaper, less expensive throughout the ages. They were slightly more greasy. You don't get quite that sort of comradeship of ink, pen, and then, you feel good about it. So you write with bounce and you have confidence. You're writing on a greasy surface. You're not quite sure whether you're going to lose it.
It's almost like the vellum is cooperating with you, pulling the letters out.
It
with
is.
You.
It just is, and there's a translucency to it if you ever see it. So it is magic. It isn't. It's a bit like saying to a violin player, "Why are you scraping horse's hair over cat's guts across a glorified cigar box?" I mean, the truth is, nothing else makes quite that sort of noise.
Can you feel the compatibility of the tools you use? I mean, just for curiosity, how many quills do you think you've used in your professional career?
Let me just give you another way of answering this. I once wrote 72 royal charters for cities in England and Wales because they changed all the boundaries and we had to have royal documents. 72 of those, and peerage documents when people are made lords, barons, and so on. That's the only stuff I do on that level. They're the highest form of diploma really in the UK. And I wrote all of those, 72 and another 12. That's something like whatever. So anyway,
1284.
Thank you. Math not my strong point. And I used one half of a goose quill pen to write all of those.
Okay.
So you find a good one. Yeah. They're tough. We just don't take them off the bird and then start writing. They're tempered in hot sand as you would steel. That changes, or baking a loaf. Damp it first, whack it into hot sand for a few seconds or half a second or whatever, depending on the heat. It hardens it, and then it becomes partly brittle, partly flexible, and it sustains an edge quite a long time. Remember, too, vellum isn't like paper. It doesn't wear the pen point out. Most papers have got fillers in them of some kind or another, and they do. It's a bit like miniature sandpaper. So you end up with it wearing out very quickly.
Donald Jackson is our guest. We're talking about the St. John's Bible. We've got a quiz coming up. We've got Nick Basbanes. I'm not sure we're going to get to any callers this week.
No, I think not.
Because we've got lots more to talk about, including a demonstration of calligraphy by our artist and the former. Hey, you can't get any higher than former scribe to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth's Crown Office at the House of Lords, Donald Jackson. We're the book guys.
Good. Could be better.
What? You're fine.
I always think about stuff. Oh, no, this is good. We're working fine.
Nice
questions. Good questions.
Yeah, just remember to stay on mic.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Well, just poke me with
I think I will from there. Why don't I do this?
Yeah.
This will be the sun. If I pick up.
I see the chance of my peripheral vision.
Okay.
You know what?
We're back, and I'm Mike Cuthbert along with Alan Stipek. Our special guest is Donald Jackson from the St. John's Bible Project, and it's time for the quiz, the Bookguys quiz, brought to you by the Center for the Book in the Library of Congress. Our prizes for our weekly winners and you on C-SPAN would be certainly eligible for this. In fact, we won't answer put any of the correct answers in the hat until after these broadcasts have aired. The Center for the Book brings us this contest, and you can win A Gentle Madness, Patience and Fortitude Among the Gently Maddest Splendor of Letters, or Every Book Its Reader by our weekly guest Nick Basbanes. These are your choice. The Ahern's Collected Books, The Guide to Values 2002, or Book Collecting 2000. The Price Guide and Bibliographic Checklist for Children's and Illustrated Books 1880 to 1970, of course, the ever-popular Bookguys Watch. 5 weeks ago, we asked, we had the delightful Christine Brennan with us, we asked, of what major event in the recent past was Christine Brennan speaking when she said, "It may very well be the last newspaper-driven sports story ever. There was no pregame show. There was no special section. It was the minivan revolution." It also sold out the Rose Bowl.
Now, I will give you a pre-story before I give the answer really quick. We were having a party at my house for my daughter's soccer team. And about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we may have had 70 people there. I look around, it's a beautiful day. It was myself and one other individual. And crammed into my very small living room were 68 people screaming at the top of their lungs. The answer is?
The 1999 Women's World Cup.
I'll never forget the day. I ate more hamburgers by myself than anybody on earth.
Who won our quiz?
Our winner is old friend, ready? Bob Walker of Yuma, Arizona.
Well, it's about time.
It is about time. And thank you, Bob. And we do appreciate the limericks and all the other poems you send us every week when you answer the questions.
This week, by what name do we know the first Bible to be authorized to be used and read from the pulpit of the Church of England? And in what year was it so approved? It is, in fact, known usually by its date and then its title. By what name do we know the first Bible to be authorized to be used and read from the pulpit of the Church of England? And in what year was it so approved?
And if you know the answer, Donald, you can't say it.
Yes.
But we always like to read our guests who we assume knows the answer to see if they're playing poker face or if they don't know it.
I can only tell you the newest one.
Okay.
File your answer at bookguys.com. There's an email link there to give us your answer, or call your answer in to 1-800-828-BOOK. That's 800-828-2665. We mentioned that, you have mentioned and intimated that calligraphy is indeed an art, and we don't expect you to do this with a quill, but before the program started, you were showing us the shaping of letters and how it is a free-form, almost choreographic exercise. What kind of tool are you going to be using in place of a quill?
Well, this is a wide marker pen, which is a nice chisel, sharp edge, which you use for demonstration and teaching.
But it works quite similar to the quill in terms of the kind of line it can produce?
Yes, indeed, because the squill is cut at a slight oblique to give you a certain weight. So, when I was talking about what text style to use, well, there are several styles in the Bible. I mean, for instance, Psalms is sung, it's poetry. And a poetic text doesn't look the same, obviously, because it's a rather jagged right-hand edge. I mean, you've got short lines and long lines, whereas we, in the main part of the Bible, it's two tall architectural columns of text justified on the right. But just to start that, I mean, how do you start to design a text? I mean, first of all, you have to decide what kind of an O. Do you want this sort of an O? Or do you want this sort of an O? And what's different is you do lots of those. You get a sort of almost Gutenberg Bible type of richness to text. If you do it like this, well, obviously it's impractical. But I mean, apart from anything else, it's not cursive. It's not this sort of thing, because that's not appropriate. It's too informal. You're talking about sacred words here. You're not talking about a shopping list or even a letter to a loved one. It's got to command a certain respect. So I'd probably settle on in fact, what I did do is settle on something which was more that sort of a shape, formal enough. But what most people don't often realize is that within that, then once you've started the O, you've got an E.
Yeah.
You have even an N. Even a letter like an S. So you see, once you hit that particular thing, the consistency goes through, and that's where you get that pattern, the rhythmic repetition of very similar spaces.
Now, is that a basic calligrapher skill, or is this something that you had to teach your crew?
Oh, no, this is basic calligraphy. Okay. I mean, if I'd had to do that, then we would have still been waiting for it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, but you see H, a J, and a G, and so on. So, and from that, you can elaborate. You can have a Y that's like this. Or you can have a Y like this. Or you can have a Y which is like this. Wherever. It's what's it's what the situation demands. And very often what will happen is that you end up at the bottom of a line of text where you've got all this, you've been writing. And one of the biggest problems too, we're writing in English. The old Bibles that you think about, that you've seen in the past, were Latin. And it was a very restricted audience, or an expert audience. So they knew that they could, there was a whole series of conventions where you could abbreviate. Dominus could be DS, or it could be Dominus, or it could be, so when the scribe gets to the end, if he's going to overrun, he's got a whole repertoire of escape routes. We don't in English, and so and the NRSV, which is the New Revised Standard Version text of the Bible, is very, very strict about it. You can't just break it wherever you like. So what will happen is, after actually trying, I mean, obviously this is out of scale, but let's say you're sort of working like this, and you think, as you get towards this line, you think, am I going to be able to make this? And then, the eye won't count that, and it won't count that. But if I had another letter, it would, so that would stick out. So after you've had that stress of 54 lines in each of these columns, it's very often I find that my colleagues or myself, you get there and you're thinking, I wish there was a G at the bottom of this column, because then you do that and you do this, and then you can at the bottom of a column you can do this. You can just fill it all out.
Fill it out.
Yeah. So you've got those things, and of course there are 2 capital letters in the chapters. They're not highly decorated because, again, Latin, it's quite important. The sentence, the main word in the sentence, I have very little Latin knowledge, but starts with a particular word, and the rest of the sentence hangs on that.
Right.
So it's appropriate to make it decorated and to draw your eye to it. Now in English we're away and running, but I did have great fun because most of the text volumes that we've done, I left the square out or the initial out so that I could stitch. There is some variation in various pages and different artists working on different pages, and so I stitched it together by one hand, just going from left to right all the way through and inventing them, but all from one hand. So it's just great fun. I mean, what's your initial again? It's
M.
M. Oh, M. It would have to be an M, wouldn't it?
Yeah, really. It could be a W if it makes
I mean, you can do W is even worse, I have to say. But there are things that happen. If you've got an ink, you can see. Look at the way that goes up and then does that and then does that and then that, and then the little movements that jiggle about, and then does that and then comes up like so and fill in. Or you can do an M, which is so like so, and like so. I mean, I'm not looking at it square, so from where I'm sitting, so there. And then you can have fun. I mean, with going through and invent them and so on. And then it's appropriate at the beginning, but not everywhere, or else you'd be seasick.
Donald Jackson is our guest. He is really something. He's a piece of work. He's the artistic director and illuminator of the St. John's Bible. We apologize to the folks who might have thought they were going to be on this week having their books appraised. We'll get to you next week, but there's no way we're going to let this guy go without draining every bit of knowledge from him. Do you anticipate, because earlier you mentioned you've got elements of Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, which is, of course, fine, and particularly the beautiful Pentateuch we've been looking at during the show. Do you anticipate any controversy because of the inclusiveness of this Bible?
Well, we've been going sort of 8 years, and every now and again I get caught up on my Hebrew spelling. Yeah. I mean, there's always somebody ready to tell me, and I'm always glad to hear. But no, I don't think so. For instance, on the title page of the Gospels and Acts, which is the whole story of Christ, starts with a family tree. And what that family tree does is it takes you back into the beginnings of Jewish history, and it names all the kings and their wives and it's
the begats.
The begats, which as a child just completely mystified me. I'd sit there and think, oh, what on earth is this? And but in fact, somebody once pointed out to me, this is, there are quite a few people on that family tree who are no better than they ought to have been. I mean, for instance, that person wasn't married to that person, and that child of that union, etc., etc. And then I started to think, that's everybody's family. That's my family. Really what it is, it's a mantra, a kind of almost a labyrinth to bring you into this rhythm. Obviously it's connecting, it's trying to establish that Christ is connected to, the Jewish kings of the past and as such as the rightful heir, etc. But when I started to see that as all people, symbolic of your family, my family, the family, and right at the bottom there you've got the child Ishmael, the child of Abraham by his handmaiden. And there, of course, he is looked upon as the ancestor of the Prophet Muhammad. So I didn't make a big deal of that, but all I did was, as well as Hebrew for the name of Ishmael and then English, I also put it in Arabic. So I'm just saying, that means a lot to you guys. It's not so important in this particular take, but what's the harm in that? And the only thing oddly enough, I think it was Father Michael Patella, who you mentioned earlier, who you've been speaking to, had a group of architecture students, one of whom was an Islamic, of the Islamic faith. And he was just tearful at the fact that his religion was included as acknowledged as part of everybody's way of reaching out to be for union with the Almighty.
Donald Jackson is our guest. Nick Basbanes will join us in just a moment. We're the Book Guys.
We have about 8 minutes to go. 7 minutes to go. Here. We're gonna be rushing to the gate at the end. There's gonna be.
Yeah, you have to do that.
Yeah.
Get a bit of tempo into it.
Yeah.
Here we come. 5 seconds. Our special guest is Donald Jackson. We're talking about the St. Mary's Bible and
St.
John's Bible. It's the wrong saint, sorry.
Yeah.
Alan Stipek and Mike Cuthbert, the Book Guys, on this special C-SPAN edition. And we are joined by our weekly guest and expert on books, Nick Basbanes. You've joined a rather distinguished guest, Nick.
I'm very familiar with Mr. Jackson's work, and before I begin, I just want to say what a great admirer I am of it. I certainly know the St. John's Bible that he's working on. I've seen I believe it's the first 2 trade editions. They're just wonderful, and I just applaud him on this extraordinary, monumental effort to do this remarkable illuminated edition of the Bible. Really quite fabulous. Great fan over here, sir.
Thank you very much.
In Washington to shake your hand.
Well, that means a lot. It means a lot to me, and it does to everybody else who works on it when we get some feedback, because we do put our hearts as well as our minds into this, and the fact that it's reaching you is what it's all about. Thank you.
Well, Mike, at the end of our program of last week,
right.
You asked me if I had ever heard of a collector by the name of Frederick W. Skiff.
Yes.
And so I think that for my little segment this week, this is kind of an object lesson for collectors. The gentleman he called from California, I think.
Correct.
Right?
Pacifica.
Pacifica. And I didn't really hear all of his everything he had to say, but my first, what is it, a book plate that he had on the book? Is that
Ex Libris.
Ex Libris.
Ex Libris. Well, Skiff turns out to be a major collector. Mm-hmm. His years 1868 to 1947. He was a writer. He wrote a book called Landmarks in Literature and American Travelogue, 1937. Adventures in Americana, Recollections of 40 Years Collecting Books, Furniture, China, Guns, and Glass, 1935. He had a 2-day sale in 1947 at Butterfield in San Francisco of not only his books, but his Chippendale mirrors, his Hepplewhite chests, his Staffordshire plates, his flintlock muskets prints, old books. I did a quick Google. That's what I would advise all collectors, not just Google whatever your search engine of choice is, but if you have something like that, well, it's so easy today. Do a little search. Just put those names in there and see what you come up with. Now, I went beyond. I have a little book called Dictionary of American Book Collectors. Mr. Skiff has 2 full pages in here. He's remarkable. What's really interesting, I also found another item online. Estelle Doheny. We all know who Estelle Doheny is, right, Alan?
We do. At least you and I do.
Well, in 1942, the Countess, she was known as the Countess Doheny. She also had a Gutenberg Bible, which was sold at her sale during the 80s and the 90s. But in 1942, she bought a collection of over 800 superb American first editions in one swoop from noted Portland, Oregon Americana specialist Frederick W. Skiff. 2 years later, she turned the Skiff collection over to St. Mary's, renaming it the Estelle Doheny Collection of American Literature. And as we know, that was all dispersed at auction. So what the gentleman has out there could be a very, very interesting book, not only that belonged to an interesting collector of Americana, but also the Countess Doheny. And I wondered, he didn't say, because a number of books, I see a book that's also offered here by Sumner and Stillman, a George Washington Cabell book, which they're offering for $295. It has the Skiff book plate and the Doheny book plate on it.
There you go.
Well. So I would say do your work, do your homework, study, but a very interesting collector, Frederick W. Skiff.
And Greg, I hope that'll help you evaluate your book even further.
Thank you for your extremely precise explanation.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay,
Bye-bye. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
You never know. I love Ex-Libris booklet. I love that stuff.
We got a good one there. Okay.
Donald Jackson is our guest. Nick mentioned he's seen the trade editions of the St. John's Bible. We have an example here. I'm not sure which one this is from behind. I can't read it. But that's the Pentateuch. What is the system by which this version of the Bible will be reproduced versus the single copy that will be, I assume, at St. John's?
Well, it's two levels, actually. I mean, there is the trade edition, as he said, which is a coffee table size, probably, I think, 15 inches by 10.
Okay.
Double that when it's opened.
Yeah.
And each one of the volumes, as they are finished, are being imaged, to the highest degree, and then they're published in a very handsome, accessible copy table sort of thing. I don't know exactly what the cost is, but it's probably about $40 or something. I don't know.
Now, are all 5 volumes already available in the trade edition?
No, first 3. 3
Okay.
already are available. That's the Gospel and Acts, and then the Pentateuch and Psalms. And then there are prints. I mean, there are individual high-quality, frameable sort of extracts from all of the 3 volumes, or more, actually, the 4th as well, I suspect, on giclée, on a high-quality one. But then there is in the works a really, really sort of big event in the publishing, in the sense that they're going to be doing 350-ish full-size, what you might say as facsimile. They're calling it the Benefactors Edition, because it won't be facsimile in the sense that it is well, I should say, because I'm still alive, it's not like you have an old book which all you can do is copy. And so my feeling is that this should be something which is almost a work of art in its own right, as a printed book, as you know, that has a quality of its own, and that would be on superb paper and so on. Quite a challenge, and that's a work in progress, but I'm involved in that.
We should mention that for any information that you'd like to get on the St. John's Bible, the website is www.saintjohnsbible.org. It's a magnificent site, and you'll see pictures of Mr. Jackson if you just can't wait until the C-SPAN broadcast, and see his handsome face, as well as the sheep surrounding his scriptorium, which is reproduced on that
all
page
saying,
as well.
thank God I'm not a cow. Right?
We apologize once again to those callers who expected to be on tonight, but this has been a rare opportunity not only to hear about the creation of a book, a 7-volume, 1,150-page Bible, but also the history of bookmaking down to the cutting of the quills. Donald Jackson, you've been a delightful guest, as well as a delightful presence in our studio, and we thank you for being with us.
It's been very good to be with you both.
Thank you.
The St. John's Bible, one of the things you hear about if you listen to the Bookguys. The Bookguys was recorded in Washington, D.C. Our producer is Warren Wigato. Our engineer is Ken Mason. The Bookguys is made possible in part by Second Story Books in Washington. Join us next week on the same station for more about the world of books, reading, writing, publishing, and collecting with the Bookguys. Next week, Janice Cook Newman, creator of a fictional account of the life of Mary Todd Lincoln. Real audio playback courtesy of ToadNet, www.toad.net. Toad provides complete internet access and DSL, 877-GET-TOAD. Support comes as well from Abe Books at abebooks.com, with millions of titles in their online database of books. Speaking for Alan Stipek and Donald Jackson, I'm Mike Cuthbert, reminding you to pick up a good book and then share what you read, because reading is a family affair. See you next week, everybody.
I was thinking of trying to get one of these for you guys.
Oh, great. My kids would love it.
You can learn more about the St. John's Bible Project at the website for the Minnesota-based Benedictine Abbey, stjohnsbible.org.